Welcome to the Modern Taoist with Kit Man. Ancient wisdom, modern life, and the way. Join the free Modern Taoist community on Patreon at patreon.com/themoderntaoist or visit the website at daoananda.com. And now, the Modern Taoist.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Modern Taoist. My name is Kit Man. And hopefully you're having a great day wherever you are, however you may be listening, on whatever platform you're listening. Please like, follow, subscribe, heart, happy face, thumbs up, whatever you got to do on your platform. They're all different. But it all helps. And if you are on Spotify, please become a subscriber to our channel. It helps us. It helps the mysterious algorithm draw more people that might be interested in Taoism from a modern perspective. If you would like to contact us, you can do that through the website at daoananda.org. That's daoananda.org or .com. Or you can find us over on the Patreon page. It's patreon.com/themoderntaoist. So all of that business now is out of the way. And that's just one of the many things that I have to do when we put together the podcast. I got to remember to do this, remember to do that, right? And that's okay. That's the commitment that I've made. Those are things that are easy for me to do, stick with, follow along. It's not a problem. The problem happens when we overcommit to things, which is why I take... I'm not saying take my time, because I tend to be somebody that makes a decision pretty quickly. But I want to know that I'm making the decision for the right reasons, right? Look at your week. Like really, really look at it. Count the things that have a claim on you right now. The requirements, the responsibilities, the schedule, the job, the relationship, the kids, your parents, a friendship you've been meaning to tend to but can't, a side project that you've started working on, a commitment you made 3 weeks ago that has suddenly shown up and you're like, oh my God, why did I say yes to that? And the things that are invisible on the calendar but are consuming space anyway. That thing someone asked you about and you said you'd think about it. That email that you've got to send but you're avoiding it. A decision that is sitting unresolved. All of these things. Now ask yourself honestly, is there one thing on that list that is actually getting the full quality of attention that it deserves? And if you're like most people, the answer is no. Now, if there is one thing on the list, you know what you should be focused on. If there's not, like most people, that answer has been no for a while. And the reason it has been no is not your fault. It's not time management, nothing to do with getting up earlier or planning better or finding a more efficient system. It's none of that. The reason is far simpler. You said yes to more than you should have. More than any human being should have, probably not because you're greedy or disorganized or bad at managing yourself, but because at the time, most of the time, yes made sense. Every one of them. At the moment, I'll do that made sense. And nobody told you that 1,000 yeses that make sense will produce a life that doesn't. This episode is about that. Avoiding things that drive accumulation. What it actually costs. And how do we get out of it? Spreading yourself too thin does not happen because you want to be overwhelmed. It happens because saying no is genuinely difficult. Saying no is harder than saying yes. Because a lot of times that request is coming from someone whose opinion matters. Your boss, your parent, partner, somebody that's been generous to you in the past. And that a no would be immediately weighed against the relationship. So your brain does this thing where it runs the calculation in like a fraction of a second. What will they think? Will they be able to interpret the refusal as something larger than it is, or will they get what I'm saying? Will they be able to handle my saying no? All of that is processed in a calculation in milliseconds. And what happens is that calculation says to you, just say yes. Just say yes. Not because you actually want to do the thing, but because the cost of saying no feels too high in the calculation. A calculation that didn't take everything into effect or into account. It's a calculation based on fear. And your yes is based on protection. You're protecting the relationship. You're protecting the image of yourself. You're protecting your ability to remain at a high level in their eyes. Right? And the long-term cost of yes is your time, your energy, other things that you're not going to do in order to do the yes. You don't think about those things. That's like your yes is something you bought on credit. And then when the bill shows up and it's got a 45% interest rate that you didn't realize, and you're like, oh, God. My calculation said yes, but it didn't take into account the interest rate. Now, that's one reason that we say yes, because yes is easier than no. The second reason is the fear of what we will miss. Opportunity arrives. You can't clearly see whether it's the right thing or not. You don't have any information yet, but you say yes, because yes keeps the possibility open and no closes it. And as human beings, we cannot bear to lose something that might turn out to have been a good decision later. Seems sensible, seems reasonable, but what that does, and I'm going to tell you a sentence here, and you're going to say, how can that be a negative? But it is. It produces a life full of open possibilities. And you may be like, well, so what's wrong with that? Open possibilities are great. None of which are able to be fully pursued. All of which are consuming the resource. That resource being your life and your time. So you said yes to protect yourself from regret later. Instead, it produced the regret of someone that is involved in so many things and invested in very little. So we've got the fear of missing. We've got easier to say yes than no. The third is because of self-image. Because most of us have a self-image that includes being able to handle yes, being capable and reliable and present. And the calendar. In our current culture, the calendar is one of the primary ways our self-image gets confirmed. A full schedule is proof that we are badass. A person with nothing on their calendar must be lazy. Right? Busyness is not just an outcome of the commitments. Busyness is the point. We feel that busyness has value. It is the visible evidence that our space is justified, that our life is being used correctly. Not having things on our calendar threatens that, which is why most people don't take things off the list. They add more, right? And the fourth driver is one that I would assume not that many people talk about, but you're going to recognize it the moment you hear it. And I can think of many people that this applies to. You say yes because you don't like the quiet, the unscheduled Saturday, an afternoon with no agenda. Because for a person who has been operating at full capacity long enough, the quiet is not relief. It's panic. Because in the quiet, the questions arrive. Is life going in the right direction? Are my choices the right ones? Is the person underneath all the activity someone that I want to be if the activity stops? And commitments, yeses, fill all that space up. So a lot of us think that the quiet time that we don't like is because we don't want to be bored. That's not it. It's because we don't want to have moments alone to think about things. You don't think that consciously. That's not a conscious thought. It's internal. All of these things, all four of these things are a set of very human responses. And yes makes sense every single time. The problem is never the individual yes. It is the yeses together. Most people that are spread thin know they're tired. They know they are stressed. They have a vague awareness that things are not quite right. What they often don't see clearly is the specific things that are being lost. Because the thing being lost is usually invisible. There's no moment where it just snaps and disappears. It gets gradually thinned out. Until one day a person looks at their relationships and their work and their daily experience and realize that something is missing. And they can't say what it was or where it went because it didn't just snap away. It got on its hands and knees and crawled out really slowly because it was being crowded out. And that thing is presence. Right? That thing is your presence. Because you cannot be half present at dinner with your child and half present with the problems from work. Because if you are, you're not fully present at either. That's not how math works. What results from the division is two half presences, neither of which are paying respect to the thing that needs your presence. Your kid gets someone that looks like you, but whose mind is elsewhere. The work problem gets the same treatment, and nothing gets you because you're spread just far too thin. Here, like you're at your kid's school event, right? You're there, but you're also into that email that needs to be going out before tomorrow, and you have a decision that has to be made before Friday. And your child looks for you in the audience and you wave, but you're not fully there. They can feel it. They don't have the words for it, but they can feel it. Or you're with your partner in the evening, but both of you somewhere else. We've talked about presence many, many times, right? Because that's what we're looking for. And a thinned out life makes it impossible to have a filled in presence. When you are spread thin for long enough, you stop being able to tell the difference between being genuinely engaged and going through the motions, because the going through the motions has become so familiar, it feels like the normal thing to do. Because you forget or have forgotten what it felt like to be fully immersed in something. You forgot what it felt like to have a conversation where you were fully present. Right? You forget. And the forgetting happens very slowly to the point where you don't notice the loss. You just notice this kind of a vague flatness of life. Right? A flatness that's not boredom, and it's not necessarily a lack of satisfaction. It's a sense that experiences that should be rich and colorful and have texture just don't. They just don't anymore. It is the experience of being present in your own life, of watching rather than inhabiting. And watching produces less. It just does. Less feeling, less meaning, less connection, less of the lived sense that this particular life is worth being in fully. You've got a gradual diminishment of the aliveness of things. It's like the difference between a living plant and an artificial plant that looks exactly the same. And from a distance, if you walk into a room and it's full of living potted plants, and it's got 3 or 4 artificial plants peppered, around, you don't necessarily see them at first, but there's something amiss when you see the plant. That one looks weird. That's your life. That's the feeling of a thinned out life. It's just a potted plant. It's given the illusion of a plant, but something's not quite right. That's what the thinly spread out life costs. Realness. Aliveness. Right? Not hours, not productivity, but the quality of the actual experience of being alive with the people who are actually worth being alive with. Now, this is one of those topics that you're not going to be able to do a Google search of what does Lao Tzu say about spreading your life too thin, because he didn't discuss overcommitment in the language of scheduling or productivity. He discussed it in the language of water, of course. Right? In chapter 11, describes the usefulness of emptiness, which we've talked a lot about many, many times. And the reason we bring it up is because it's a big deal in Taoism. Fill the vessel, and then it can't receive anything else. It's all over Taoism. Somebody said to me, how come you hit on the same kinds of themes so often? And they said, Taoism, you're always talking about water and you're always talking about nature. I said, well, when you go to a Baptist church, they're always talking about Jesus. Like you know what I mean? It's kind of hand in glove. And I don't talk about it as a philosophical observation. I talk about it as a practical description of what happens when you say yes to everything. Your vessel becomes too full. And what felt like abundance is the thing that's keeping the real abundance from arriving. Right? And a little further along in the Tao Te Ching, in chapter 44, he asks, what's more important, fame or your own well-being? What causes more harm, gaining things or losing them? And it concludes that excessive accumulation leads to greater loss. The actual daily lived loss when you thought you were building towards something by adding things. The Taoist sage in the Tao Te Ching is not described as someone who has organized their commitment sufficiently. They're described as someone who has made real choices about what their life is for, and someone who has had the courage to protect that choice by saying no to things that do not serve the life. When something comes along, take that moment, take that pause, and ask yourself, does this serve my life? And learn to say no, not as a rejection of the person that asked, not as a rejection of the idea that they have or something that they want you to participate in. Say no as loyalty. Loyalty to yourself. Loyalty to the life that you're actually trying to live, and to the people in it who deserve your full presence. To the work you've chosen as your vocation that deserves your full engagement. Right? What is left when the unnecessary has been cleared? We've talked about it before, the uncarved block. The raw material in its original state before it has been shaped by outside forces. That is what gets left when you clear all the nonsense. Think about this. The overcommitted life is a life. It's a rock that has been carved by other people. Clearing that is not a loss. It allows you to return to the original shape. The one thing that was always there, you. Underneath everything that is accumulated on top of it. When you get rid of those things, you get down to you. So by losing, you are gaining. Fill to the brim and it will spill. Keep sharpening a blade and it will dull. If you want something to last, know when to say no. Know when to stop. Know when to stop. That, my friends, is the instruction. Know when to stop. I didn't say know how to manage those things more effectively. I didn't say know how to optimize a system so you can add more. Know when to stop. When to stop adding. Know when enough has been committed to. Know that the sharpness you are trying to maintain by constantly adding to your life is actually being destroyed by the adding, over-sharpening a blade, and the blade will dull. Most people don't know when to stop for one simple reason. They've never given themselves permission. Culture does not give that permission. The people around you don't give that permission. And this version of yourself that you're trying to cultivate doesn't give you that permission. So the real you has to give yourself permission to say no. A lot of times we wait for external circumstances to make everything stop without us having to say no. We wait for an illness or a breakdown or a relationship that finally reaches the boiling point. And rather than making the choice ourselves while there was still something to do about it, we let the circumstance make the choice for us. I'm telling you right now, I am the person in your life that is giving you permission to know when it is enough. You do not have to wait for the circumstance to force it. The permission is yours. Look in the mirror. That is the person that can change the thinned out life. And I'm not saying it doesn't require you to burn your calendar, right? It doesn't require you to quit your job. It doesn't require you to have this big, metaphysical spring cleaning. What it requires is something that's actually harder than all of that. It requires honesty. Steady, specific, honest examination of what is going on in your life and why are these individual things there. So, start the list. Not the calendar, the actual list of everything that currently has a claim on your attention and your energy, and write it down. I don't give specific instructions too often, except in our private guidance sessions. I almost always will give specific instructions. But on these podcasts, I don't do that too often, but I'm going to do it right now. Get paper and a pencil or a pen or nail polish. I don't care what you write with. And write it down somewhere where you can see all of it at once. The professional commitments, the personal commitments, the social commitments, the ones you have not quite admitted to yourself that are commitments, but they're consuming space anyway. Write them all down. And start at the top and ask a question about each individual thing. Not whether it's good or valuable or connected to people you care about. Almost everything will pass that test or you wouldn't have said no. The question you have to ask is what I am bringing to this sufficient enough to be doing it? Is the fraction of presence and attention this thing is currently receiving from me enough for it to be something in my life? Is the time I give this enough for it to actually work? Or is this just simply an obligation that I have given a false name to? Is the attention I give this enough to become something I would actually be proud of? Or am I just performing the attention? And this is what I talk about when I said, you have to be honest, because this is uncomfortable to answer when you've got the list. There may be things on there that you genuinely think that you will miss when you take it off the list because you had at one point a reason to say yes. But you have to be honest. Because I'm telling you right now, the question I asked you a second ago, is the attention I give this project or the attention I give this thing on my list, is it enough to be in my life? Most of the things on that list, the answer is going to be no. If you're honest with yourself. The thing is not receiving what it requires to be on the list. And sitting with that is hard because the options it opens up are hard. Because then your choices are either give the thing that it actually, give it the presence it actually needs, which means taking presence away from somewhere else, or acknowledging that the thing does not need to be on the list in the first place. Most of us can think about 5 things right now. The problem is most people aren't honest enough to ask that question. Then they're not strong enough to have the action. And so they choose neither. They continue at the current level telling themselves, I'll do better when things settle down. My favorite thing of all time. Well, when things settle down, well, yeah. Things don't settle down. Hello. They just don't. Because something else will get added. Because the next thing will look important enough to say yes to. And that calculation will run the same as it always does. And the yeses will pile up again. And your list will get longer. And then you'll say again 6 months from now, well, when things settle down, be honest with yourself. The way out of this begins with one removal. Not the easiest thing on the list either. Don't do that. Because that's not where the problem is. The obligation that made sense when you took it on and has since become something you do out of momentum rather than commitment. The best way to do this is look at your list and say, if this was offered to me today, knowing what I know, having listened to Kit on the podcast, if this was offered to me right now, would I say yes or no? Right? Most of the things on that list, you would go, yeah, I'd probably say no to that. But the problem is it's been there long enough that declining it now feels like a bigger deal than saying no would have been in the first place. Because now you have to make excuses for why you don't want to do it. Okay, so find that thing on your list and end it. Actually end it. And listen, don't deprioritize it. Okay, that's cheating. Don't deprioritize it and then secretly keep it on the list. No. End it with whatever communication is required, with honesty about your capacity, without apologizing. And then realize the weight that leaves your shoulders. Realize the space that is now available. And don't fill that with another yes. Notice what that space feels like, and then choose another item on the list. Right? And then maybe another item. And then you'll realize, wow, I have time to be present with the things that remain. And then when you get an incoming request, treat that space as something sacred. That's how you say no. By making it worth it. Is this worth filling the sacred space that I have? When the next thing arrives, and it will arrive, stop before you say yes. Is this worthy of my sacred space that I created when I erased 3 things from my list? Believe me, that simple question right there is enough. It creates just enough of a pause between the request and the response to make sure your response is a choice. To make sure you're honest with yourself and you say, no, this is not worthy of my sacred space. Or, yeah, it is. I need to say yes to this. That's okay, because then you have taken responsibility for the choice. And over time, this is not going to happen in a week, right? It's going to happen over months. Your list will get shorter because that sacred space will get more valuable. And what you'll find is the list, it doesn't get empty. It gets shorter. Because now there's only available 3 spaces of yes, and there's 15 spaces of no. Those no spaces are not available anymore. So the list is not empty. It's filled up with your three things. It just became a shorter list. And those three things will receive more of you. And those three things will improve, whether it's a work thing or a side project or a relationship, they'll deepen. Because the people or the project is getting more of you. And your mornings will feel different because you're not carrying the weight of the 18 things. You're carrying 3 things. And you have space. You have 15 slots of sacred space. This is what we say in Taoism when we say less is more. That's not philosophical. This is real life stuff. This is a lived experience. Leave the things that remain because they are powerful enough to have your presence. When you end the thing that did not belong, the first feeling is often not relief, it's guilt. Because you'll have this sense that you let someone down or that you prove some fear correct about being the kind of person that you are that, they couldn't follow through on something. That's okay. You're going to feel that guilt. Sit with that guilt for a few days. That's fine. It'll pass. And what is underneath that guilt once it clears is the recognition that what you let go was never worth having in the first place. It was never worth being on your list. Because the things that are in your life that stay on the list will get more of you. They get the version of you that is not managing the 15 other things. The people and the projects are never going to say anything directly to you, but something will shift in that relationship. When the quality of your attention changes, the quality of what is possible changes. Do you understand that? Let me say that again. When the quality of your attention changes, the quality of what is possible changes. That is a magical thing. And that is available to you right now. Right now. Not when things settle down, I'll get to it. Not when the timing is better. No. Because the things that require and are worthy of your full presence are waiting for it. They are thirsty for your presence. The question is, do you have the honesty in yourself to remove the things that are not worthy? That's how you repair a thinly spread life. Let's move on to our listener question this week. Comes to us from, I think this is our first ever from the continent of Africa. Super cool. Comes to us from Marcus in Cape Town. Kid, I keep hearing that Taoism is thousands of years old. Well, you keep hearing that. Okay, that's because it is. How do we know the texts are accurate? Has anything been lost in translation? I'm smirking, not as making fun of you, Marcus. I'm giggling because scholars have been asking this question for a long time. And the answer is yes. When you ask me, has anything been lost in translation? Yes, it has. Of course. How much have been lost? Genuinely unknown. The Tao Te Ching that most people read today is based on texts that have been copied and recopied for centuries before printing even existed. The oldest physical versions we have that were found in some tombs in 1973, those date to around 300 BCE, and they differ from the standard version in some pretty big ways. Mostly because it's a translation issue because of the language barrier and the symbols that don't exist anymore, that did exist then. Chapters appear in different orders. Some lines have different characters. Some passages became central, and some just are different than what were in those original There were two different tombs, one in 1973 in, I cannot remember the name of the place, Mawadangui, something like that. Anyway, and then another one in 1993. And those two tombs are basically where we get all of the translations. But what this also tells us is the text was never fixed from the beginning. It was a living material that was shaped by hands over many generations. A lot of people brought their own relationship to it. The issue is not whether the texts that we have are 175% accurate with what the sages wrote down. Because the translations, every translation in every scripture, Bible, Torah, the Quran, they're all translations, okay? They all are. And they've all changed over time. Every translation is an act of interpretation, especially in Taoism and in Buddhism, and because the classical Chinese is extraordinarily compressed. I have tried to study classical Chinese. It is shockingly difficult. A single character can have multiple meanings, and the translator has to choose which meaning they believe it is. Because, for instance, just even the Tao Te Ching, Dai, Te, is usually translated as virtue, but it can also be translated as power or integrity, or in the case of Taoism, inherent nature. And remember what Lao Tzu says, the Tao itself cannot be translated. Every English version, every French version, every version that is not in ancient Chinese is one person's attempt to point at something that the original was pointing at. Let's remember that the pointing is not the thing. The message is the thing. Right? And we hold these teachings in respect because they have survived. Because somewhere along the way, someone thought it was important enough to hold on to it. So, of course, some things will be lost along the way. Even my podcast is a translation of the Tao Te Ching. I bring a lot of my own ideas of what I believe Lao Tzu was pointing to. Most of them are pretty spot on, but occasionally I'll throw one in there. Right? That's how it works. So thank you, Marcus, for your question. I hope I answered it. I hope that makes sense to you. Remember, it's not about a perfect translation. It's about the message. Does the message make sense to you? Do these teachings seem like, why didn't I think about that before? Or do they seem like, this guy's off his rocker? What the hell is he talking about? And if you think I'm off of my rocker and what the hell am I talking about? Well, then that itself is Taoism. You have now discovered something you don't agree with. Here's your Taoist assignment this week. We already talked about it. I already gave you your assignment. Take something off your list. Take something off. Something you've been keeping because it's been there long enough that ending it feels significant, when really it doesn't. It isn't. End it. Actually end it. Then notice what that space feels like. That is one gap of sacred space to you now. End something else. And make sure that your list gets shorter, not emptier. Understand? The emptiness is what makes things possible. You did not arrive at a thinly spread life through bad choices. You arrived there through 1,000 very reasonable yeses. The way back is not dramatic. It's very steady. It just requires your honesty. In pursuit of learning, something is gained every day. In pursuit of the Tao, something is let go. The letting go is not the loss. Let something go. Discover that sacred space. If this one found you at the right time, pass it on. Send it, whatever, to whoever. If you got questions, comments, give them to me. You can do that if you're a Spotify subscriber. You can leave your comments there on the Spotify page, or you can send me an email. There's a form you can little contact thing on the website. It's Dawananda, DAOANANDA.org or .com. Or you can join us where the questions get answered a little more quickly over on Patreon. It's patreon.com/The Modern Taoist. If you're interested in private guidance, that's available on the website as well. Check it out. Until next time, I will see you right back here on The Modern Taoist.
Thanks for listening to The Modern Taoist with Kit Man. Join the free Patreon community at patreon.com/The Modern Taoist and subscribe to the podcast for new episodes every Tuesday and weekend Taoism check-ins every Friday. Visit the website at dawananda.com and don't forget to like and follow us on whatever platform you find us.